Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Wealth Standard Podcast. We're on episode 8 of the season that is themed Liberty, which is off of the philosopher John Locke's alluding to life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, which are the elements required for human prosperity. And it's been really fun. I mean, this season is something that I'm really passionate about, and the guests that I've been fortunate enough to interview really resonate with this theme. So I hope you guys are finding a lot of value out of it. If you're a new-time listener, you can go back to listen to not just this season, but go back to the previous season. Binge listen to the idea of life, you being your greatest asset, before getting to the theme of liberty, which is I would say understanding of a human being's I would say instinctive desire for freedom, not just from a country perspective, but also from a professional perspective. And I think there's a lot that goes into that, which I'm obviously not going to explain right now. But my book that's coming out in just a little bit, a few weeks, I've actually submitted all the final information, and so the launch date should be released soon, most likely toward the end of July. But stay tuned for that. But the theme of that book is obviously in line with what we're doing this year in 2018, which is 4 months of life, you are your greatest asset, 4 months of liberty, which is the pursuit of freedom, not the pursuit of retirement. And then finally, we're going to end with the pursuit of property and what that means. And so this is the author today, or the author and guest today. His name is Joel Comm, and he recently wrote the book, The Fun Formula, and it has to do with professional life and the opportunities that are available to so many people, whether it's internally in a company or externally. And you guys are gonna love him. Awesome personality, such a cool interview. It was really fun to talk to this guy. And he's also the host of the Bad Crypto podcast. Yes, that's what it is. It's the Bad Crypto podcast. You'll hear a little bit about that. But he's also the host and executive producer of The Next Internet Millionaire. And he has been an entrepreneur for a really long time, an online entrepreneur. And he's one of a kind. And it was such a blessing to interview him. You can go check him out at joelcomm.com. So it's JOELCOMM, so 2 M's.com. And you guys are going to get a kick out of it. So if you are a new-time listener, get to the website. We have a bunch of information there, thewealthstandard.com, or hit us up online. Follow me on Instagram, Patrick Donahoe, CEO. And I look forward to with some future announcements in relation to the book and some other cool things that we're working on. All right, without further delay, here is my interview with Joel Comm.
Welcome to the 2018 seasons of the Wealth Standard Podcast, celebrating life, liberty, and property. You are listening to Liberty, Season 2.
So, Joel, it's a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Patrick. It's my pleasure.
Well, Joel, this is going to be an awesome conversation because this is the idea of work, the idea of producing. It's what we spend like the majority of our life doing, it seems. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's this amazing revolution going on. And your new book that has just come out, and I want you to talk a little bit about that. It themes into really what I've been trying to address in the last couple months, and it's this idea of how rapidly evolving our society is when it comes to professions. I think that there's a massive revolution going on right now in that, the dissatisfaction people have at work isn't necessarily something that they have to put up with anymore. Mm. So anyway, I'm excited to, it's the first time we've met. I'm excited to, really dive into this topic specific to your new book. But why don't you just go ahead and give us a little bit of your background, and then we'll get into the topic at hand.
Well, there's my background behind me. So that's my office. Oh, sorry, bad joke. I've been doing business online now for almost 23 years. And in that time, I've created sites, I've bought sites, I've sold sites, I've done affiliate marketing, internet marketing, social media marketing. I've written 15 books. I'm an international keynote speaker. I'm a video producer, a live video marketing strategist, a blogger, a podcaster. Pretty much I've done everything that's not illegal, immoral, or fattening. Thinking about opening my own donut shop or something so I can cross off one of those. And now I've got my 15th book is out, my brand new book called The Fun Formula. And this is kind of my core message. This is what I want people to know, and I think it's going to be really inspiring to them.
So I'll hit you with a curveball right out of the gate. What is the weirdest successful business you've ever seen online?
The one I've ever seen?
The one that was like, that's a business?
Gosh, I don't know. Weird to me. Maybe my own. I'm going to just go with my own. The fact that I created a fart app that had millions of downloads and made me a big sack of cash. That's pretty weird. I never saw that coming.
I saw recently a Japanese candy subscription box model. So you get this box of like different types of Japanese candy every month.
Oh, I get that. They're big on that. There's some stores that do imports of that, and people, they're fanatical about their Japanese candy.
All right, so let's
think in Japan that they have an American candy subscription box, because we make a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, but those are like iconic brands. That wouldn't be, but you never know. They probably do. I just thought that was the weirdest one I've seen, so I haven't seen much apparently. All right, cool. So let's pivot to the topic at hand. So, obviously your experience, I would say professionally is atypical, right? And so you get to see, what a person's mind and their creative abilities can do online. But how did you decide to write a book for the masses, right? A message that, maybe someone not as versed or experienced on the internet could take and be excited about and apply to, their specific circumstance?
Mm-hmm. Well, I started with nothing, just like everybody, just a dream to build a business and to do something cool. And so what I've done is I've reverse engineered my 23 years of doing business, and I've looked at my massive successes and my massive failures and everything in between. And as I reverse engineered these, I discovered something really interesting that I think I knew in my core, but now that I've seen not once, not twice, but many times it play out again and again, the massive successes took the least amount of effort. And they happened when I was my most curious, when I was willing to take the greatest risk, and when I allowed the process, the serendipity, to happen in its own natural time, when it wasn't forced. It's when I was doing the hustle and grind that I actually had my biggest failures and my biggest frustrations and feeling unfulfilled. And so the Fun Formula is really intended to be liberating, because the message of hustle and grind has been forced on people to the point where it's dogmatic. And many people actually believe you got to get up first, you got to work all day, I'm going to grind away at it like it's a virtue, and I'm going to be the last one out of the office, and I'm going to work weekends. Mm-hmm. That is a recipe, unless you are in the 0.1%. That is a recipe for disaster, mm-hmm. not only for the success of your business, but also for your personal life.
Success of you.
Message.
No, it's totally true. And it's one of those, I grew up in a kind of a military family, and my dad was this like hardcore, like what you just described, right? And he, and I think there are some elements of that were important, but they sent me off to like, the corn farms of Tennessee in the summers, right, to learn hard work, mm-hmm. right? And my uncle was a soil scientist for the University of Tennessee. So this was, I learned there that I hate hard work. And
there's nothing wrong with it.
Scarred me, right? So that I would seek things that, aren't as labor intensive.
Well,
right?
let's be fair, though, Patrick. There's nothing wrong with hard work. You know, previous generations have taught us that hard work is a virtue, and I agree with that. And there are times that you need to buckle down and get it done. But as a lifestyle, it's not sustainable, and it's not healthy. And just because hard work is a virtue, 10x the work doesn't make 10x the virtue.
No, it's totally true. And, and it's not, I think it's interesting. I did an interview earlier this year. Gosh, the guy's name's like totally escaping me, but it talked about kids. And I think it's a very similar principle where, kids are taught to, have this regimen, in the public school system, this regimen of, do this, you get this grade, you get this, criteria, you work independently. But his whole premise is that kids, right, are going to thrive more so when they're playing and having fun, because that's when, maybe you did some of this research for the book, but, it's a different part of the brain, right? You're starting to, your mind when you're a youth, your neural pathways aren't necessarily formed yet. And the creativity and the fun is like thriving. And that I think is just natural for people, is to seek things that are pleasurable, right? And I don't think that has to be excluded from work.
No, I think it's fine to and important to learn how to adult. But whoever said we have to grow up, and that is to leave our curiosity and wonder and childlikeness and our souls behind, that is not the answer. That is the road to bitterness. And, I'm 54 years old, but part of my bio, the last line is eternal 12-year-old, because, maybe there's a part of me that's forever, stunted and stuck there. I do what motivates me, what drives me. And guess what? I've made a lot of money. I've also lost a lot of money. Once you know how to make money, it's no longer about money. It's about lifestyle.
Yep, the fear goes away.
Right. We have these people out there that are leeching off those that are susceptible, especially young people. And the messages are, hey, you want to be like me and have this Lambo in your garage, and you want to have this big house and stacks of cash and boats and vacation homes, and nothing wrong with any of that. But if you think that that is going to fulfill you, you got another thing coming. All you have to do is look at the decades of, data we have on people who seemingly have had it all and have taken their own lives to know that that is not the solution. That is a dead-end road that makes you go, now what? And so money is no longer a motivating factor for me. And believe me, I've had times in my life where I've had more, much more, but I am much more content with less right now because I'm living a lifestyle that is congruent with who I am. And that's what the fun formula is all about. And there's people, your audience is listening, and I guarantee you there are people that are trapped by their American dream. It's become their own prison because they got the big house and the fat mortgage, and they have to live in a certain neighborhood, and they're working this job that they hate, planning for 5, 10, 20 years from now when they can escape it and retire. Boy, that to me is the very definition of selling your soul. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people that I have great respect for that are doing the hard work because they have to. They're supported. They might be a single mother. You're supporting your family, your kids. I get that. I'm talking about people that are pursuing this because they think there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. And for one in 50,000, pulling that data out of my ear, but it's a very small minority of people that's actually the case. You're going down the wrong road.
So let's talk about pivoting in just a second, but I want to hit on something, and you and I didn't have this discussion beforehand. And the philosophy behind what you're saying is, really what your book is, I believe, is the true American dream. I think the American dream has evolved and become something else to people. But what we've done this year for the show is we broke it into three parts, and each part has a theme. And the overarching quote that essentially created the theme is from John Locke. So that the philosopher in England way back in the 1700s. He's the one that first coined the phrase about human prosperity, which is they have to have freedom for life, freedom for liberty, And he said property, even though Thomas Jefferson took it and talked about freedom to pursue happiness, going to your book. And so this part of the year, we're talking about liberty, which is freedom. And some of the things you're mentioning are perfect, because I think people are pursuing fulfillment. They just think fulfillment is going to come by having material things, right? And the perfect example is just what we've experienced, with Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain just in the last couple of weeks, right? Where guys that achieved, what people strive their whole life to achieve, right? But yet they take their own lives. And, who knows, there's a variety of reasons behind it, right? But it's really the seeking of fulfillment that I believe people are after. And they just connect it with, this new kind of pseudo American dream, which is, this flashy car, flashy home, flashy lifestyle, right? And that's, and I'm not sure if you identify in the book, but if you do, how do you start to teach people how to essentially align themselves with what they're most likely seeking in the first place, and then what are some of the first steps that you talk about?
Well, stop listening to the people that are trying to sell you something, because that's what they're doing. The guy in his garage with his Lambo is just trying to sell you a course. He's selling you a false dream. It's a false god, a false idol. That it's a load. I mean, it's like a lot of marketing is like television is about selling toothpaste and toilet paper, right? That's why the news exists to excuse me.
No, fine.
Is to scare people, because if we're afraid, then we're paying attention, and it's entertainment from the fear side. Tune out those negative voices. Tune in to what you really want. You might not know exactly what that is, but then do something different. Follow those passions, follow your curiosity down the rabbit hole. Don't think that you don't have value to add, because you do in your own unique way. And, when we look at planning out for a lifetime, once upon a time, our grandparents or parents went to work, and you work for one company for 40 years, and then you get the gold watch and you'd retire. Well, retirement is not only not an option for a lot of people, but it's a myth. Who wants to just stop producing? Now, there might be a point in your life where physically you're not able to do something, but the moment you stop living, is it from the movie Shawshank Redemption? Get busy living or get busy dying. And so you have to do something. You have to be willing to take risks, and you have to be willing to shut out the voices of those who are telling you that you can't or you shouldn't, and you should do it anyway. It's the only way you're really going to find fulfillment. If you feel like you are trapped in a situation that you can't change, you are actually way more empowered to make a change than you know. Maybe you've been convinced that you're stuck, but the only one who is really in charge of you being stuck is you. And you always have options. Whether they're attractive options or they seem attractive or not, you are still in control. And people get into so much negative talk to themselves, Patrick. And I'm guilty of it as well, right?
We all are, yeah.
We can be really hard on ourselves. And it dawned on me that if I had any friends that spoke to me the same way that I talk to myself, that would be a really bad friend.
Yeah, okay.
We need to be kinder to ourselves and believe in ourselves. There's a whole mishmash. It's like a stew there of things, and
But I think everyone will understand each of the ingredients of that stew, right? Because I've been hitting on all of this. That's why this is kind of the serendipity, right, of our conversation. But you're hitting on some points that I feel really passionate about, because I know people that have, quote unquote, retired or pursued that or gone and pursued, the American dream as they, contextualized it. But in the end, it's this kind of like, it's a tangible end, right? It's not a emotionally driven end, because I think people are trying to achieve, a sense of emotion when they're in this, retirement, which is not being afraid, right? Which is not having to do something. But that's the thing. It's like that's not the definition of retirement. Retirement is to stop doing, right? To stop contributing. This is stop. It's a definition of, and I've never really talked about this before, but it's a definition of not having to, which is freedom, versus stopping doing. There's a conflict, right? The word retirement and what people are seeking, I would assume, is in conflict. And in the end, it's like we're meant to, take our uniqueness and provide that to others, right? In whatever form. But I would say like today, yeah, maybe 40, 50 years ago, there were, a certain basket of positions, right? Attorney, lawyer, doctor. But today it's like, Japanese candy delivering it in a box. I mean, essentially proof that people can essentially, come up with whatever they're passionate about and turn it into a business, or at least go out and seek a business that they're passionate about. I mean, I took a part of my team to this virtual reality game place, and it looked like these guys that sold $1 million of Bitcoin and took it and like invested in all these like computers and VR headsets. I just took this like retail store without doing any upgrading. They just threw all this stuff into like this room, and they had people lined up after our assigned 2 hours. They had people lined up at the door, and the guy was just like giddy as can be, right? But I would say today there's no better time to go out and discover something that you could do, be paid for, be a part of, right? That aligns with something that you are interested and excited about. And I'm assuming that that's, part of the equation that you're trying to teach people.
It is. And of course, it's not a mathematical formula, because for each person, it's going to be unique and it's going to be different. But that's the beauty of the fun formula, is it goes back to your uniqueness. It goes back to not letting people should on you, culture telling you who you are, parents, teachers, peers, what you should be, how you should live. You are empowered today, whether you are aware of it or not, whether you accept it or not, whether anybody else has ever told you that or not, and the change you can affect is up to you. In fact, there's people that would say, oh, this is easy for you to say, Joel. You've already been successful. I mean, I've had 15 books. I'm a New York Times bestseller. I've had a #1 iPhone app. I sold a site to Yahoo. And there's this whole list of things that I've done that were tremendously successful. There's also an even longer list of things that I've done that failed, or at best had, moderate success. But it's because I've been willing to take a risk, and people are afraid. They're afraid of what if I fail? Hey, failure is the best teacher you will ever meet. It will show you will learn so much about yourself from failure, and it's not something to be shied away from. If you want to grow, you have to take risks, and if you want to live your dream, you're going to have to put yourself out there. And if you're self-doubting, I can identify with that, because just because you've had a success doesn't mean that you've always feel successful. In fact, if you look at any musician or performer, once they've hit the top of the charts, what is their biggest fear?
Not being able to go. Yeah.
That they won't be able to stay there.
Yeah.
How hard must it have been for somebody like Michael Jackson after Thriller and Bad to not have the public pay attention to his music or care about the new stuff he was writing? Everything was so sensationalized about what he was up to and what he looked like. Never again did he top the charts. And, as I was writing this book, I was recovering from a really difficult period in my life, with broken relationships, and my business had gone downhill, and I was beginning to doubt myself and ask myself the same questions that many here that are listening are asking. And that question is my greatest work behind me? No, when we believe our greatest work is behind us, we can lose hope. And even as I turned in the first draft of this book, while from outward appearances, I was very successful writing and speaking and traveling and getting brand influencer gigs, I didn't feel like any of those things were a home run for me. And I began to wonder, am I going to have another home run? And I knew I couldn't manufacture it. I understood that I just needed to allow the process to take place. And indeed, in between the first and second draft, it happened, Patrick. Didn't see it coming, couldn't have planned it. I had this natural curiosity about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, blockchain, all the digital money that's going to revolutionize the world. And I started going down the rabbit hole last April. And long story short, by July, I was so fascinated with it that I started a podcast with my friend Travis Wright, who's a leading marketing technologist. And within 2 days later, we put up this podcast, July 18th, 2017, called the Bad Crypto Podcast. Bad because we didn't really know what we were talking about. And we took our experience as broadcasters and podcasters and hosts, and we created the show, which has now become a huge pivot for me because it's a home run. And I'm having a great time. And I could not have seen it coming. I couldn't have planned it, but I allowed the process to take place, and the magic happened again. And so even though I've been there and had successes, I was doubting myself. And now I've got a bigger platform than ever before.
So I'm going to pull out kind of two things from what you just said, which I think are important, because I agree. I mean, I think fear is one of the most powerful emotions, right? And fear of failure, I think, is a subset of that emotion that everybody has. So my question is, where does that come from, right? And why rationally do we know that it is the whole acronym false evidence appearing real? I mean, there's a million of them, right? Why do we know that rationally, but yet we still have that internal, like, well, I don't want to fail, or if I fail, then this is going to happen. That we start to play these these stories out in our mind, even though we know that failure is one of the most important, critical steps to achievement or to.
We live in a performance-oriented world. That's just the reality. Everybody doesn't get a trophy. If everybody got a trophy, and in some cases they do get participation trophies, I don't think that serves anybody. There's no winners, there's no losers. We're all the same. We are all homogeneous robots. We are all the same. But we're not. We're unique individuals with unique value to bring. And we begin believing these messages that failure equals a shortcoming in us. Well, guess what? We've all got shortcomings. If your failure reveals it, it's been there all along. I am so flawed and so broken and full of shortcomings, but I'm able to embrace that. And I think that there's empowerment in embracing your humanity and being flawed, and recognizing that in the vast knowledge and information that is in the universe, you know so little that you couldn't even see it. If it was a dot on a piece of paper, we don't know anything, and we control about this much. We struggle and strive to be in control of our lives, but nobody controlled. You did not control when you were born, and unless you are sadly and tragically taking your own life, which I encourage no one to do, you don't control when you die. What makes you think that in this little short life you have, that you have control over much more than choosing your meals or where you're going to go or what you're going to do? There are 7 billion other people in the world, all of which could impact you at any time. There are environmental factors, there are political factors, there are economic factors that you have no control over, and that makes us afraid. But when we let go and understand that we don't have to control everything, that opens up opportunities for us to try things that we would not otherwise have the courage to try.
No, this is it, and that was actually to be the second part of my question, or second question I had. Have you ever read David Hawkins' Letting Go?
I have not.
Yeah, he wrote Power versus Force, and he's MD. Brilliant guy. Actually, I think he may have passed away recently. But the letting go principle is actually not this kind of like theoretical thing. It's an actual provable, like a scientifically provable idea. And it's amazing. It's the, I'm going to totally botch this, but letting go of outcome, right, is actually going to make the outcome much more probable, right, to your ideal outcome, much more probable to happen, right?
Or an outcome that you didn't see coming.
Yeah, it's better.
So magical.
Yeah. or not. And that's the idea. You make some great points. And, I think people, maybe it's a survival instinct. Maybe it's part of our, social, our social makeup that, makes us want to be perfect or look perfect or act perfect or whatever. But in the end, you're absolutely right. And I think that, oftentimes, people forget that because of those instincts. So do you talk about, in the book about overcoming those, emotional, powerful emotional blockages that we have?
Yeah, that's in there, as well as stories from, others that I've encountered on my journey that are also living out their version of the fun formula. It's Thoreau once said, most men lead lives of quiet desperation.
Yeah.
And they're planning for a future that may never come. I know people that have done the hustle and grind for decades, commuting back and forth to a job they hate, because at the end of the road, this is what they're going to do, right? They've got fill in the blank. Well, what if that doesn't come? What if a change in plans? What if, what if you don't get to live longer than, you thought you might? Or what if there's a health issue or a family issue or anything that could change your plans? And, there's this proverb that people say, man plans and God laughs. I don't think he laughs. I think he goes, oh, why are you doing that? There's a better way than that way. And I just want to let people know you can escape the hustle and grind. You can have the life that you dream of, and you can bring value to the world in a unique way that nobody else can. And my desire for you is to experience that.
Well, Joel, we share a lot of the same, ideas. Obviously, we're in completely different businesses, but
we're neighbors. I'm in Colorado, and you're in Utah.
Yeah, we're Rocky Mountain neighbors.
Yeah, you're on the other side.
It's one of those things where I think, because we live in such an amazing world. And I was mentioning to you the interview I had a few weeks ago with John Tamney, who's, an economist and a very well-versed, very knowledgeable economist, right? Same idea, approaching it from a different standpoint, right? But he's making the case that the world is so quickly evolving, and, his book went against the whole, automation and robotics and how it's going to displace tons of workers. Okay. And a lot of people are afraid of that, and they're coming to conclusions like, universal basic income and some other things. But his case is that, human beings often, they'll figure it out. They'll come up with things that don't exist right now.
Of course
they'll invent jobs that don't exist right now. Right? But it gives more and more and more abundance to really find something that does fulfill us, right? But also can provide the remuneration, that can provide income, can provide a lifestyle. And I think it's more probable than ever. And he also makes the case that you have these not anti-American, I guess they're anti-American, but the country we live in, despite its many flaws, if you compare that to, the rest of the world, like, we are insanely blessed. And it's one of those, opportunities of a lifetime to take the steps to live a life you love. And if you are experiencing adversity, it's to dissect it and realize that, there's other things that you can do, and it's not worth, sacrificing that time for, I believe that people are just convinced that I have to grind so that I can retire and then I'll be happy. And I just hate that. I don't like that hypothesis, because I don't think it works.
No, it doesn't. We do live in amazing times. There is more opportunity to live a true American dream, and really beyond America, into the world. There's more opportunity now than there has ever been. In the early days, in an agrarian society, you went out and you worked the fields. That's what you did. You harvested your crops. You went to market. You provided services like that. And then we went to the industrial age, and many of the agrarian jobs were replaced by machines. And then we go into the digital age, and we have computers, and we're entering the robotic age. But it's also a service industry age. Now on any given day, I'll call for a Lyft to come pick me up, and I don't have to drive to get where I'm going. And somebody's making money from that, doing it with something they couldn't do before. I'll have Instacart deliver me groceries. Somebody's shopping for me. I'll have Zeal come and do a massage, a therapeutic massage here in, my apartment. instead of going out to a spa. There's people that are doing all kinds of services, and there's going to be more like that. Become skilled at something you love to do, and odds are you'll find a way to monetize that.
And I'll hit on one more thing. I know we've talked about 1,000 different topics, but most people will say, oh, you're paying for this and you're paying for that, and oh, how expensive. But the idea in the end is that it's very similar to how I look at, a financial statement, right? You have assets, liabilities, and cash flow, right? You know what you're good at, right? You know where your time is best dedicated, and you want to try to dedicate as much of your time there as possible. And so you pay for the convenience, the efficiency to do more of it. And you're also rewarding people you can't give yourself a massage, right? But, could you make your own food? Yeah, but that's not your talent. And if you, find talent in somebody else that you allow them to do that, there's this karmatic effect to it.
Right. You're putting into the economy. And not only that, but if I have somebody deliver my groceries, yes, I can spend time working. I could also spend time not working
and having
not
fun,
going to the store. The most valuable asset I have is my time and how I choose to use it.
Yep.
And so I'm willing to pay a premium, because what I'm actually paying for is to have more time to do what I want to do. It's not just the food being delivered. It's not going to the store, not dealing with traffic.
Yep. Or not dealing with choosing this or choosing this or choosing this. Right. I mean, there's so much. Yeah, you're hitting on all of it. Those were amazing. Those were amazing comments. All right. Well, why don't you tell the audience, because I know your time is really valuable. What the book? Go out and get the book.
Yeah.
And we'll actually give a bunch of them. We'll get a couple. We'll get a few from you and give them out to the audience. But what are the best ways to follow you? You're everywhere. I think there's something on your website that says just Google me. And
we'll grab the book at funformulabook.com, and wherever you purchase it from, come back to that page and put in your name, your email, and your order number. And there's a ton of bonuses, including an instant download of the digital book. There's 3 videos that I've created just for people who've purchased it. There's going to be an exclusive webinar for those who have bought it. 20% of the audio book. There is a free accompanying study guide that goes chapter by chapter to help flesh out the fun formula in your own life. And I promise you, this book will inspire you, and it will make a difference in how you operate going forward. I can't wait to hear people's feedback. funformulabook.com.
Okay, Joel, it was amazing meeting you. Thanks for all you're doing. You can feel your excitement and energy around it. So thanks for sharing your message. Can't wait to hear feedback on your book from the audience, but we'll definitely do this again soon.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you for joining us as the Wealth Standard Podcast spends all of 2018 celebrating life, liberty, and property. Be sure to leave us a review on iTunes, and we'll see you on the next one.